Okay, welcome back to the Maryland 250 Labor History Project. I'm Bill Berry, and our guest today is an extraordinary guy, Andrew Morton, also better known as Wild Man, who worked at Sparrows Point for many years, but also created computer models of the mill, which is something unique and dynamic. So, Andrew, tell us a little bit of how you started working at Sparrows Point.
Well, I started Sparrows Point June 25th, 1970. A little skinny kid coming from West Baltimore, didn't know which way I wanted to go. So when I first went down to Bethlehem Steel, I didn't realize that they had two separate locals, and we had taken the tests. And at that time, they needed people to fill in on the blast furnace because the blast furnace, the guys were getting older and they were leaving, they were dying out. So actually, I applied as an electrical apprentice. And I saw that ad in the Sun paper. They had a full ad in the Sun paper. And I went down, took the test. I didn't know much about electricity, but I did do pretty well. And they should have put me in the electrical department, but they didn't. They wanted me to go to the blast furnace. I went to Oscar Hall's Labor Gang 520 department. From that point on, Oscar Hall was a feeder unit to the blast furnace. So within 3 weeks, I was initiated to the blast furnace. Now, when I first went up on the blast furnace, mind you, I had never seen a blast furnace before in my life. Um, my first day, they had a major breakout on number 4 blast furnace. Well, when I first saw that steel hitting the floor and the heat monkeys running, it was in July, and the heat monkeys running across the floor, and I saw the iron hit the floor, and it was like explosion, many explosions. I rolled my equipment up and went down to the bottom of the furnace because I was going to quit. I said, "This is not for me." But then an old guy by the name of Horace Cronin, he was the keep up on the furnace that day. He came down the step and he said, "What's wrong with you, young man?" And I said, "Sir, I don't think I can do this kind of work." And he said, "How do you know? You didn't even try." So he talked with me for a little while and he kind of embarrassed me. So I rolled my stuff up and he said, "Come on back up here. We're going to make a man out of you." And we went back in the back. First thing they did, I had some Gino Marchetti food. They took that, threw it in the trash can, and the guys told me, "Sit down at the table." And he was the biggest guys that I ever seen. And guys like names like Broadway, Cat Eye Johnson, Plato, King Kong, those type of guys. And they were big. They were 6'2", 320 pounds, 290 pounds. Well, anyway, they put a plate on the table, and they put a half a chicken. They put collard greens and so forth, and they set me down. They took my shoes off. They said, "You don't even have the right kind of shoes." I said, "Well, these was company issues." Said, "But this is not what company issued to work on a blast furnace." So a guy by the name of Wade, Bob Wade, he took me in the back and he took my shoes and he cut tire soles out and made soles for my shoes. And my shoes then became real heavy. And like I said, I wasn't used to that. Then after I ate real good, they said, "Come on now, we're going to show you how to be a blast furnace man." And from that point on, the guys took me under their wing. Guys like Reverend Bonds, L.Z. Smith, Reverend Martin. Uh, they showed me the ropes. They showed me the things that I need to do to survive on a blast furnace. Well, after a period of time, I developed the name Wild Man. A guy named Plato gave me that name. And I got bigger, stronger. I was able to outwork those guys and work with them. So I stayed on the blast furnace 17 straight years. But then I started seeing the decline of the furnaces and decline of the steel mill. Things were changing. Bethlehem Steel was no longer the big boy on the block. And a guy by the name of Comegys and Charles Robinson asked me one day, "What would you do if the plant shut down?" And I said, "Well, we guys," he said, "we can't use these skills uptown." So I thought about that. Then I transferred over to the coke ovens. And the same thing happened. They took me under their wing, but then the coke oven started going down. That by that time, L Furnace came online. L Furnace came online in '78. Uh, then things totally changed in the old mills. They started shutting down 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5 was gone. 5 and 6 were gone. Even over the coke ovens, 7 and 8 battery, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, they were gone. So I started thinking to myself, oh, well, things are changing here. And I was telling the guys, I said, I got a feeling that this plane's not going to be here very long. Well, they kept telling me that Maryland can't survive without Bethlehem Steel. And I knew that was a problem there because I said, I don't think that's true. Well, anyway, in 1995, 96, ISG came into play, International Steel Group. International Steel Group wanted a much more professional employee. Then career development, the union, local 2610, 2609, and USA Devil, they made a deal with ISG and they started career development. Well, I enrolled in the first course at Essex Community College.
Well, explain what career development is.
Career development was a concept that the union started and the company, that they would open up area colleges, and also they set up on the plant itself courses that you could take. So I decided to enroll in the colleges. So I enrolled at Essex Community College, and the first course that I took was getting comfortable with computers.
And what year was this?
This was in 1990, at the end of 95, beginning of 96.
Okay.
So I took the course, was going to school every evening because I was working straight daylight, was going to school every evening. And I started getting into programming, how computers function. And my instructor, Mr. Lurie, he said, well, at the end of the course, he said, Mr. Morton, you aced this course. You did very, very well. Why don't you learn how to program? And I told him, I said, look, I don't think I'm capable of doing that. And he told me, he said, look, he said, if you learn how to program, you'll always have a job because you'll be able to program the program the users have to use. So by that time, I thought about it and I went back to work. Then I transferred again over to the 68 hot strip mill because with my new skills, my attitude on the blast furnace, I'm walking around with computer books and the guys walking around Playboy magazines, it didn't fit. And I know that I had reached my limit of what I could do on the blast furnace. Even though I'm thankful for those guys because those guys gave me a foundation. They gave me a foundation to be able to move forward. So I went over to 68 hot strip mill and it was a whole entirely different environment. First of all, I was not, my interpretation of 2609 was we didn't associate with them. That was the white side, 2610 was the black side. And but it was a totally different thing when I went there.
Let me just stop 1 second for people who are not familiar that these are the two major locals for the steelworkers at Sparrows Point. And the union halls are still there at the intersection of Eastern Avenue and Dundalk Avenue. They're both closed and looking not great. But at one time they had 30,000 people working at Sparrows Point, and they would cram these halls. But they were the center of the community, as you just described.
Yes. Okay. So once I went over to 2609, it was a totally different environment. The guys there and management there, they wanted you to use your head and think and be much more professional in your attitude towards your job. They want you to have a much more positive skill set. Well, one of the things that I noticed that operational people didn't talk to engineers. The engineers didn't talk to operational people, and they didn't understand the operations. Well, during that time period, I was definitely interested in computers because I talked with some of the engineers like Dennis Dunn, Kevin Archer, Harry Eck, and they explained to me that program was a foundation to everything on the mill. Then I started getting involved with Dave McGraw and mechanical people. They started teaching me how the mechanics of the mill work. Then Dennis Dunn, he was a Harvard graduate. He was one of the top engineers. He sit me down one day and started understanding, teaching me the mathematics behind the mill and how the mill functioned. And he also told me that in order for me to really, really advance and get into proper programming, I would have to go and take courses. So he introduced me to Gorman Institute online, VTC, which was virtual training computers online, and Escape Studio. So I enrolled in all three. And I was taking classes every evening after I got off from work at night. And they were very, very professional. Then I started talking to the other engineers like Kevin Archer. He was very instrumental in teaching me how the mill functioned on the engineering level. With my learning that I was learning online and with the engineers teaching me on the job, I started to think like they thought and like an engineer. And I started to think about sequential things. And then I started talking with Dave McGraw, Rick Faulkner, and they started teaching me the hydraulics because they knew I was interested. They started teaching me how the mechanics of the mill, how different equipments interact with one another. Then I learned at Escape Studio about geometry and how things worked. Once I learned this and I understood that there are 5 principal geometric shapes: cylinder, square, cone, rectangular, and sphere, and how they interact with one another. And if you understood those 5 principal geometric shapes, you could build anything. So I started taking my new skill sets and knowledge and started studying the mill. And I would go home, sit down, take a pad, and start sketching the mill out. Then I started going to work and I started staying on the job after I got off of work. I would stay after work and have Dave McGraw. He would let me see the schematics, and Bill Bensley, and he would show me the electrical end of it. And I started to understand how geometry and movement and mechanics all interacted together. So I started using that skill set and started designing parts of the mill. Once I designed parts of the mill, and with my newfound learning of programming in C, C++, C Sharp, and VB.NET, I started designing the mill because the training in the mill at that time wasn't good. And one of the things that really I could not understand, operational people could do the job, but they couldn't explain when there was a problem to the engineers exactly what the problem was. And the engineers understood the engineering concept of the mill, but they didn't understand the operations of the mill. So I started mixing both and teaching, working with the engineers and teaching them the operational and creating moving mechanical objects that mimic the mill. Then I said to myself, well, I looked at the computer system, and Kevin Archer showed me how the computer system worked in conjunction with the mill. I started designing a mimic of the mill. Once I did that, and I came up with a working program, I made an appointment. I went to the union first, and the union over there, they wasn't interested. They said, well, for one, they didn't think I had the capability to complete it. So I decided, okay, I will go to management. Well, I set up an appointment with Elsie Fletcher and Bob Richards. Elsie Fletcher, she was in charge of all the technology of the mill. Bob Richards was the plant manager. When I went there, didn't know that I would be competing a bid with Illustrations and Learnscape, because they were the ones that were designing the training programs for the mill. When I gave my presentation with a finished product. I had an actual finished working duplicate of the 68 hot strip mill. Everybody was blown away with that. So within the 40 days, they just called me back and they said, we're going to take your bid and we're going to offer you a contract. And in doing that, I became the first Black man in the history of Bethlehem Steel to be a union worker and then be paid as a contractor designing, developing software for the mill. So I designed the software and I also wrote the training manuals. And I have the training manuals right here that I designed. And it actually mimicked the training in the mill. I actually drew the screens as they actually were the screens that the guys would actually have to use. And the reason that I came up with that concept, I said that if I can create an exact duplicate of the training of the mill, then that would cut down on errors, because the guys were actually training on the job training. And if they made an error, that would shut the mill down. So from that point on, I went home and started thinking. I said, well, I could design this plant. I can actually create a VR of the plant. So I started going back over to the blast furnace, because I had already worked all the top jobs. I was a keeper on number 8, so I understood all the top jobs over there. And I went into the coke ovens. I started sketching the coke ovens, sketching the blast furnace, sketching the ore dock with the SRs. And in doing that, I actually started going home and started building the mill itself. It took me 5 years, 14,452 pieces were built, all using geometry and mathematics and C++. So that's how I came and designed the program. And since that time period, I've actually refined it, and I actually have a little demonstration right here of the program itself. And this is a 3D model.
Hold it up a little higher. There you go.
That's the basic oxygen furnace.
Oh, wow, that up a little higher. And what we're going to try to do here is to include a short clip, but also we are going to attach on the final posting as we go along more of Andrew's incredible computer-generated stuff.
Bethlehem Steel program that you see in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is the actual program, the VR program of the mill. At least 14,000, 15,000 pieces in order to construct. This program is designed to show Bethlehem Steel inside and out as it was from 1970 to 2021.
Wow.
This program is designed so you'll be able to have an avatar to walk through the mill, as you can see there. And this man will walk you through the mill, but you also have another unique feature, and that you'll be able to use a drone to fly over the mill. And this was done with the fantastic powers of AI. And with the technology that we have now, it's made things really, really beautiful to work with.
Okay.
Program is designed for appreciation for all the workers that worked at Bethlehem Steel, and for the skills that I was able to obtain by working at Bethlehem Steel with the help of the USAW, Local Union 2610, 2609, and management at ISG and Middle. I was able to obtain the skills necessary to create and design this engineering program.
Okay, I think that's great. And Andrew, it's fantastic. As I said to the people who are watching, I don't know if we can
just rotate it.
um,
You can see how big the plant is.
I don't know that I can share. Let me see here. No, I can't. Share the thing. So let me see, we're losing each other here. So we are going to include the videos of Andrew's projects, and you can see the incredible skills that he has generated and the imagination that was used for it. But it's a unique part of labor history in Maryland because there is no place, no one else has ever done anything quite like this. And so I want to say, Andrew, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
All right there, Bill.